Okay, welcome to Chapter 7, which is the sampling chapter. This is Chapter 7, Part 1. We're going to go through the basics of sampling today. Specifically, we're going to talk about probability sampling today and get to biased sampling in the next part. So let's go ahead and skip that one and look at what we're talking about today. We're specifically going to discuss population versus sample, and then we're going to go through the representative sampling behaviors. Then we'll get into, in the second half, some of the biased sampling, which is the unrepresentative sampling that we've talked about before. So let's discuss what is going on with populations and sampling. This is something that people get a little bit confused about. Remember, we want our studies to apply to a specific group. Well, the group that we want it to apply to is the population. That's what we call the population. It's everybody who the study should apply to. We generally cannot go out and measure every person in a population. Sometimes we do. We call that a census. So, for example, in the United States of America, by law, which is actually in the Constitution, every 10 years you have to take a census. And that means that every person in the United States has to be counted. The reason why it's a census is because it's everybody. If you can run a study where you measure everybody, well, then you know that your study applies to everybody because you measured everybody. That's a census. But almost always, in fact, except for the United States Census, it's very, very uncommon for there to be a census in a study, and specifically in psychology. And so normally when we're doing a study, we have to get people to be in our study. The people that we get to be in our study is the sample. We call it a sample because it's a sample of the people in the population. It's not everybody, it's a sample from the population. And remember, our goal is for our study to apply to everybody in the population. That's what we'd like to know. So for example, if I want to know if wearing glasses makes you more attractive, I want to know that for the entire population. Well, what is the population that I really care about? Let's say that the population that I care about is everybody in the state of Colorado, right? So I want to know if in the state of Colorado, wearing glasses makes you more attractive. Well, I don't have the time, money, or resources to go out and measure every person in the state of Colorado to see if the ones who wear glasses are more attractive. I don't have that opportunity. So what do? I take some of the people in Colorado to be in my study. I sample from the population. The people that you get to be in your study, that is a sample. Now, there are different ways that you can sample. This entire chapter is on different ways that people can sample. The first thing you need to know, though, is the definition of something called a sampling frame. And this is crucial because people get mixed up on this. If you want to take a sample and you want it to be representative, almost always you need a sampling frame. A sampling frame is a list of everyone in the population. Let me say that again. A sampling frame is a list of everyone in the population. I didn't say everyone in the sample, I said everyone in the population. It's called a sampling frame because you take everyone in the population, and from that sampling frame, you can take your sample. Okay. Here's an example of a sampling frame. Let's assume that a standard deck of cards was my population. This is everybody that I care about right there. Okay. It's a list of everyone in the population. That's my sampling frame. So a list of every card in the deck of cards would be the sampling frame. And then if I take 10 of the cards out of these 52 cards, that would be my sample. The sampling frame is a list of everyone. The sample is the smaller group, the one that's going to be in my study, right? A sample from the population. So today we are going to talk first about representative samples. Many times, especially when we're talking about either frequency studies or correlational studies, it's more important for us to have a representative sample. That is that the sample, the people in our study, need to represent the population because we want our results to apply to the whole population. But how do we get our sample to be representative? Well, these are the different probability sampling methods that we're going to talk about today. All right? And so we're going to talk about simple random, systematic sampling, cluster, multi-stage, stratified random, and oversampling as procedures to try and get a representative sample. A representative sample just means that the people in the sample have the same characteristics or they're representative in the same proportion as the entire population. That's a representative sample. So let's talk about how we would do this. So in order to demonstrate, let's give a hypothetical example. We're going to start with this group right here. So I made up this list of 50 people. Okay? So if you see right here, this column is a number. I've given every person a number, and this is their name, right? So these are all 50 people in a population. All 50 people in the population. This is their sex. This is their political party affiliation. These are some proportions that I know about this particular population. So, for example, of these 50 people, this is the whole population. This is not a sample. This is the whole population, all 50 people. These are the only people I care about. When I run my study, I only care that my results apply to this population here. All right? Let's say that it's a population of, I don't know, tenants in a building, right? And I only want to know about the tenants in my building. And these are their first names. Well, turns out that in the population, I have 10 males and 40 females. That means that in the population, there's 20% male and 80% female. In my population, there's 16 Republicans, 16 Democrats, 16 independents, and 2 libertarians. That means 32% Republican, 32% Democrat, 32% independent, and 4% libertarian. Okay, this is all for the population. So this list of everyone in the population, we call that a list of everyone in the population is a sampling frame because we're going to take from these people and we're going to sample. Now, let's start with the first kind of sampling in our representative sampling, and that is simple random.